where today we are going to be going over our week predictions for week 15 of the 2024 NFL season. Before we get into this video, make sure to leave a like if you enjoy. Hit the subscribe button, as it really helps. And in the comments section, make sure you let me know some of your picks and some of your comments on my picks. But without further ado, let's get into a quick recap of last week. We ended last week with a 9-4 record, not too bad. Brings our total record up to 141-67. So we have more than double our losses in wins. So that's good. First game, we have the Thursday night matchup between the Los Angeles Rams, who are 7-6, and the Niners, who are 6-7. The Niners are 3-point favorites in this game. And with how this division's going and how this division has gone, I have no idea who's going to win this game. Very even. When you look at the how these offenses and defenses match up with each other, it is a very even game. It should be a very close game. The Niners coming off of their big win versus the Bears, kind of getting that offense back on track, having a huge performance overall, the whole offense and defense, but that team got back on track versus the Bears. And the Rams coming off of their insane upset over the Bills in that insanely high-scoring game. So both these teams sort of coming off of a big high last week, both with great momentum. Rams with a lot of momentum, actually. 2 in a row, one versus the Saints, and then a win versus the Bills. They're on a 2-game win streak, while the Niners got their first win in 4 weeks. And again, it is a toss-up, but I just think the Rams are playing just slightly better than the Niners. I think what Matt Stafford and Puka have going on right now is insane. Like, those two are clicking right now. And that's not to mention Kyron and Cooper Kupp still playing well. So I'm actually going to go with the Rams in a very narrow win, 28-27 over the Niners, covering the spread, obviously, because they are the underdogs, with a 1-point victory. Next, we have the 5-8 Dallas Cowboys taking on the 3-10 Panthers, who are actually favored in this game. Who would have thought that? I think I saw something that it's their first time being favored in a game in like 2 years, since like 2022 or something like that. They're 3-point favorites currently. They started off at like 1.5, but it keeps moving. So that's kind of crazy just to think about where this team was early in the season. But the Cowboys, we always talk about the Panthers, who have played well recently. The Cowboys have honestly played pretty good. They beat the Commanders. Yes, it's the Giants, but they beat the Giants on Thanksgiving, beat the Commanders the week before. And if that punt block didn't go against their way, they could have potentially have beaten the Bengals as well, and they could be on a 3-game win streak. So the Cowboys, just like the Panthers, are playing very good competitive football recently. So this is a very close one. But with the talent on defense from these both teams, I think people expect it to be a higher scoring game. But I do think it could maybe teeter on the both teams scoring in the mid-20s, because the run games, I think, is what's going to establish these two offenses, with both teams having great run game. Well, the Cowboys' run game hasn't been great just until recently, but the Panthers have a terrible run defense, and the Cowboys don't have a great run defense. So I think this is going to be a run-heavy game. It's going to be Dowdle versus Chuba. And I just think the Panthers are at home. I think their passing attack is slightly better than the Cowboys' passing attack. And I think that could be the difference in this game. And I have the Panthers winning 28-24, covering the 3-point spread and winning the game over the Dallas Cowboys. Next, we have the 12-1 Chiefs taking on the 3-10 Cleveland Browns. Chiefs only 4-point favorites, probably because every game they play is close. Considering the records, you would think the Chiefs would be much heavier favorites in this game. But again, the Chiefs just like to play close games, and they like to win in every single way possible. Browns, on the other hand, they did have that crazy win on Thursday night not too long ago against the Steelers. But ever since that game, the 2 weeks after, they did lose, lost to the Broncos in a crazy game on Monday night and then lost to the Steelers again, or they played the Steelers again and then lost this time around. And we all love Jameis, and Jameis is playing pretty good. Jerry Jeudy's having a great season, but I just think they're outmatched talent-wise with the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs just have that slight edge in talent and coaching, and with their tendency to just win games, I do think they'll be able to win this one versus the Browns. But I do think it'll be a relatively high-scoring game, and again a close game because the Chiefs always like to play close games. I'm going Chiefs 30-27 over the Cleveland Browns, which actually would mean the Browns would cover the 4-point spread. Next game, we have the 6-7 Dolphins taking on the 8-5 Texans. Texans are 3-point favorites in this game, at least as the time we're recording this video. That's for all the odds that we mentioned. And Texans coming off of a bye week, Dolphins coming off a big overtime win versus the Jets. And I think this could be a very close coin, like up at 50-50 game. Like, I didn't know who to pick here. But honestly, with how the Dolphins have been playing and with how the Texans have also been up and down, inconsistent, I do think the Dolphins have a very good chance to win this game because the weakness of the Texans have been their O-line. Their O-line has not done a great job. Stroud has gotten pressured and sacked way more than he did last year, his rookie season. And the Dolphins have a pretty decent defense. So I do think with their defense, I think they can get to Stroud. I think they can contain guys like Nico Collins and Joe Mixon. And I know the Texans also have themselves a good defense. But Tua and this Dolphins offense is starting to slowly figure things out. Because they've scored 30-plus points in 3 of their last 4 games, and the only time they didn't do it was against a good Packers defense in the snow. So their offense is figuring it out. So I think that with the struggles and inconsistencies the Texans offense has, I don't think they'll be able to score enough points to keep up with this relatively hot Dolphins offense. And it's not snowing in this game because it's in Houston and it's indoors. I think the Dolphins win 27-24 over the Houston Texans. Now this is an interesting one. We have the 3-10 Jets taking on the 3-10 Jaguars. The Jets are 3-point favorites. Jets coming off of, yes, it was a loss, but it was a very encouraging loss. Garrett Wilson played great. Braylon Allen had himself a good game. Devontae Adams played good. And Aaron Rodgers, more importantly, had himself his best game in a while. I think his first 300-yard passing game in like 2 years. Now, granted, he missed the whole season, but still. Rodgers played very good against, as I mentioned before, a good Dolphins defense. And he's now going into this game versus a bad Jags defense. And the Jags are coming in, of course, still without Trevor Lawrence, even though Mac Jones hasn't looked horrible since coming in for Trevor Lawrence, this more recent stint. He looked okay, I think, the first time around, but the second time he seems to be playing a little bit better. And the Jets defense, which is known for being a very good defense, hasn't been great, although their pass defense is still good. Sauce Gardner hasn't had the best season, but he's still a good corner. You still got a good overall pass defense there. And I think they'll be able to get to Mac Jones and stop him enough. And I just think this Jags defense is not good enough. And I do think it'll be a close game, but I'm going to go Jets 23-20 over the Jaguars. Our next matchup is the 8-5 Commanders taking on the 5-8 New Orleans Saints. The Commanders are 7.5-point favorites. And one big thing is I think Marshawn Lattimore is going to play for the first time. And it so happens to be at New Orleans, which is kind of cool. And I think the Saints are starting Jake Haener at quarterback. Let me make sure. Yeah, they're gonna. It looks like they're gonna start Jake Haener at quarterback. And the Commanders' defense has been up and down, but with the addition of Marshawn Lattimore, I do think they'll be able to prevent Jake Haener from. I mean, Jake Haener only put up 14 points, or not Jake Haener, but the Saints offense as a whole only put up 14 points against a bad Giants defense last week. So I don't think they'll be able to put up much against the Commanders. And I just don't think they have the defense to slow down Jaden Daniels, coming off a bye as well. And I do think this will be a relatively easy win for the Commanders. And maybe the Saints get some garbage time touchdowns. And I have the Commanders winning 30-24 against the Saints. Now we have potentially the biggest, I guess spread-wise, the biggest spread I've seen in a while. We have the 8-5 Ravens, who are 16-point favorites versus the 2-11 Giants. I'm pretty sure the Eagles were 13.5-point favorites versus the Panthers last week. And the Lions had some big spreads too, but the Ravens are massive favorites in this game. Understandably so. The Giants are potentially the worst team in football. And the Ravens, coming off of a bye, coming off of a disappointing loss to the Eagles, as well as 2 weeks ago a disappointing loss to the Steelers. But I think mainly that Eagles loss is what they're looking to bounce back from. And they get to play a Giants defense who can't stop the run very well, if at all. And the Ravens obviously have one of the best rushing attacks in all of football with Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, and even Justice Hill as well. And then the one struggle that the Ravens have had has been their pass defense. And if there's a time to play, if there's a game for the Ravens pass defense to not get picked apart on, it's playing Drew Lock and the Giants. It might not even be Drew Lock. I think it might be Tommy DeVito, actually. So I don't think the Giants stand much of a chance in this game. And this is actually going to be my lock of the week. I have the Ravens winning 35-20 over the Giants. So the Giants do cover the 16-point spread, as they only lose by 15. But I do think the Ravens will relatively easily win this game. Next, we have the 5-8 Bengals taking on the 3-10 Titans. Titans are 5-point underdogs in this game. And I actually think this game could be a lot closer than maybe some people would expect, because the Bengals don't have a good defense. Obviously, we all know this. And the Titans have had a struggling offense, but Will Levis hasn't played terrible. And again, if there's a team to put point, the Cowboys somewhat have reestablished their run game, particularly for one game. They established it against a team like the Bengals, and Tony Pollard's coming off of a very good game he had. Their most recent game, because I think they had they played the Jags, but I think Tony Pollard's had some good weeks recently. And I think the Titans can score. Yeah, their offense hasn't been good, but the Bengals have one of the worst defenses in the league. And when it comes to the Bengals offense, which has been insane, it is their passing game. Their pass game has been the best in football. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase are leading in 5 major statistical categories at their position. But the one strength the Titans do have is their pass defense. They probably have one of the best pass defenses in all of football, if not the best. At least yards-wise, they're only allowing 189 passing yards a game. So they're not going to be able to stop Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. No one can. But if there is a team that can somewhat limit them, I do think it can be the Titans. And I think that maybe Will Levis, Tony Pollard, and this Titans offense can potentially score the points needed to outscore the Bengals offense, which might be somewhat contained, somewhat limited. So my upset of the week is going to be the Titans 27-24 over the Bengals, which would probably officially eliminate the Bengals for the playoffs. And it would be their old offensive coordinator, I think, Brian Callahan, beating the Bengals as the Titans head coach, which would also be, I guess, a cool story as he eliminates from the playoffs on his new team. Next game we have is the 3-10 Patriots taking on the 6-7 Cardinals. Cardinals are 6-point favorites in this game. I think that's pretty fair. I think that's pretty accurate. I do think it'll be about I'm kind of spoiling this already. I do think the Cardinals win this game, and I do think they win by about a touchdown. I just, as much as Drake May has looked promising, I think the Cardinals defense is good enough. I know they didn't play great for Seattle, but I think overall this Cardinals defense is good enough to stop Drake May from getting going. And I just don't think the Patriots defense will be able to stop Kyler enough. And I think the Cardinals win 24-17 over the Patriots. This is a very interesting game right here. The 6-7 Colts versus the 8-5 Broncos. Broncos 4-point favorites. Right now, the Broncos have the 2-game lead over the Colts for that last spot in the playoffs. But if the Colts win this, with how their schedule looks compared to the Broncos, they could easily sneak into the playoffs because they would have that tiebreaker. So this is, if the Broncos win this, they could potentially cement themselves as that 7th seed. But if the Colts win this, that race for that last spot in the playoffs could get very interesting. So this is a very big game for the AFC playoff picture. And I do think it'll be a good and close game as well. Because Anthony Richardson, he's looked pretty good since coming back himself from the bench. And the Broncos themselves have obviously looked very good. Having that, they had a bye week as well, but the last game, so did the Colts, I believe. But the last game was that Monday night win over the Browns where their offense didn't actually look like insane. Bo Nix actually didn't have a crazy game. It was mainly Jameis throwing those 2 pick sixes. But the Broncos defense has been elite all year. And I do think the Colts could put up a fight against them. But I just think that the Broncos are just going to be a little bit too much for the Colts. And I think they'll get the slight edge just in general, just as the slightly better team. And I think the Broncos win it close, 21-20. Or Broncos win 21-20 over the Colts. Now, potentially, as exciting as that Broncos-Colts game is, the actual game of the week is the 10-3 Bills taking on the 12-1 Detroit Lions. Lions, 2.5-point favorites. It's crazy that the Bills are underdog in a game, but it makes sense considering they're playing the Lions. And this game is probably going to be the best game. And I think it's going to come down to the Lions' defense. Can they contain Josh Allen? Because I think with how the Rams played against the Bills' defense, I think the Lions can score points. But can they stop this? It's going to come down to which defense, I guess, in general, can step up. Because the Lions have one of the better defenses, scoring-wise, and so do the Bills. But they're playing the number 1 and number 2 scoring offense. So it's going to come down to which defense can contain and limit the opposing offense enough. And I don't know, the Lions are a little bit banged up on defense. I know that didn't stop them. Well, actually, they let the Packers score 30. But I just think the Lions are coming in off of a very huge win on Thursday night against the Packers. And the Bills are coming off of an unfortunate loss to the Rams. I just think the Bills will have that slight extra willingness to win this game, even though you can't question the Lions' willingness to win. But I'm going to go with the Bills here, 31-28 over the Lions. The Lions can't have one loss the whole season, right? That's also mainly my... I just don't know. I just don't see the Lions going like 15-1 or 14-2. And if there's one time for them to lose, it's to the Bills. So I'm going Bills in this one, in hopefully the best game of the week. Next, we have the 7-6 Buccaneers taking on the 8-5 Chargers. An interesting game here. Chargers 3-point favorites. What I've said when it comes to the Chargers playing teams that are really good on offense and not so good on defense, kind of like the Buccaneers, I tend to lean towards the Chargers because of how good their defense is played and how good their offense can play. Because the Bucs score points. Baker throws a ton of yards, a ton of touchdowns on most games, but I don't know if he'll be able to do that against the Chargers. And when you have Herbert playing this Bucs defense, he could easily lead his offense to 4 touchdowns. And I don't know if the Bucs can score them 4 touchdowns themselves against the Chargers. And so I just think the Chargers defense will be able to stop Baker enough, and I think the Chargers win 27-21 over the Buccaneers. Now we have the Battle of Pittsburgh, or the Battle of Pennsylvania, that's what I meant. We have the 11-2 Eagles taking on the 10-3 Steelers. Eagles 5.5-point favorites, which seems high to me because of how good the Steelers have played and with how the Eagles looked last week against the Panthers. But I think the Eagles' offense is going to be, I think there's all the talk about A.J. Brown after his lackluster performance, whether it was his fault or not, or he just wasn't getting the ball thrown. It seems like A.J. Brown is out for vengeance this game. And I just think the Eagles are going to be motivated to win this game, to score a ton of points. I don't know if they will because the Steelers' defense is very good. I think this will be close, but I'm just feeling the home team here. I'm going to give the edge to the Eagles here, 24-20 over the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now we have the Sunday night matchup. We have the 9-4 Packers taking on the 8-5 Seahawks. Packers 3-point favorites in this game. Seahawks coming off of a very impressive win versus the Cardinals, where Zach Charbonnet just ran all over them. And I don't think the Packers have a particularly good run defense. They don't have a bad run defense, but I don't think it's like the best in football. So I do think whether it's Charbonnet or Kenneth Walker can produce. But I just don't know if the Seahawks defense can stop Jordan Love enough. If the Lions defense let Jordan Love put up 30, I think the Seahawks defense might do the same. And I think the Packers offense is just going to come down to which offense can score more points. And I just trust the Packers offense a little bit more than the Seahawks offense. So I'm going to go Green Bay winning 30-27 over the Seahawks. We have a Monday night doubleheader. Don't know why they keep doing this, but the first game of the Monday Night Football doubleheader is the 4-9 Bears taking on the 11-2 Vikings. Vikings are 7-point favorites. It was a close game last time these two teams played. I think it was like 30-27 in overtime in favor of the Vikings. But with what the Vikings did to the Falcons last week, I just don't see how the Bears can win this game, especially considering how their offense looked against the Niners last week as well. I think it will be close, somewhat low scoring, because you got to respect the Bears' defense. Like, I don't think Sam Darnold's going to throw for 5 touchdowns against them. But I just don't know if their offense will have enough. And I have the Vikings winning 28-24 over the Bears. Last game we have is the 6-7 Falcons, again, coming off of that, a tough loss to the Vikings, taking on the 2-11 Raiders. Falcons only 4-point favorites. That seems very low considering how the Raiders are not a good team. I know they almost beat the Chiefs, potentially should have beat the Chiefs. They kept it kind of close versus the Bucs, but they're just not a good team. And I know Kirk Cousins has not looked good, but if there's a team to sort of get back, if there's a sort of a get-right team, a get-right game for Kirk Cousins to kind of maybe get back to what he was doing kind of early in the year, especially when he had that big game against the Bucs, I think it would be the Raiders. Their defense is just not particularly great. It's not a bad defense by any means, at least like in terms of scoring wise is where they lack, but every other aspect they're not horrible. But I think Kirk Cousins will be able to have himself a good game against the Raiders defense. And I do think that the Raiders themselves can score. A lot of people can score against the Falcons, but I just don't think it'll be enough. And I think the Falcons win 30-23 over the Raiders. That will conclude our predictions for Week 15 of the 2024 NFL season. Let me know in the comment section some of your picks, some of your thoughts on our picks or my picks. And also make sure you leave a like if you enjoyed and subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.